Hi everyone, nubkeks here and welcome back to Nub Raids, and in today's video I'm giving you my champion guide for Husk. One of the most sort of underrated epics in the game. He's amazing early game, and now with the release of Hydra, he's actually amazing in the end game as well, and people are, the spotlights come back onto Husk a bit, which is really cool. So what does he do? Well, as you'll see as we go through his kit, he's actually very similar to a Royal Guard, right? Very similar to him in a lot of ways. I actually haven't booked up his A1 fully, because I'm using him in like an end game context. I'll show him to you though in an earlier game context where you actually would want to book up this A1. So that's for things like dungeons and faction wars, maybe even some Doom Tower stuff, right? Doom Tower hard. But his A1 attacks one enemy 2 times, 20% chance of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn. Now when you book this up, this goes up to a 40% chance to place provoke, which is actually pretty solid. That's not bad. It can certainly help you with, for example, the Magma Dragon, a boss that you have to provoke in Doom Tower, especially in Doom Tower hard even. Husk is going to be very helpful for that. Really nice. Good for some control and waves and stuff. Unfortunately, this just does not do much damage. It's based off of his attack, and his base attack, as you can see, is very low. So the damage this is going to do is just not really going to be there. The damage is all going to come from his A2, Despair, and this is amazing. 4-turn cooldown when it is booked up. Attacks all enemies, 35% chance of placing a stun for 1 turn. That bucks up to a 60% chance to stun for 1 turn. So, but the big thing about this is that the damage inflicted is proportional to enemy max HP. So what do we do with Husk? You'll see when we come to building him and his gear, we're going to crank his crit rate to 100%, and then we're going to give him as much crit damage as possible. All of the damage is going to be based off his enemy's max HP. So when we face enemies with lots of max HP, so you think about dungeon bosses, or more for endgame, that Hydra clan boss, yeah? Massive HP pools in those. So this ability is absolutely going to clap them. Huge damage. And then for that earlier game stuff, for wave-based content, 60% chance to stun is actually really nice. That's going to make your progression through the dungeons much smoother, through faction wars much smoother. So it's a great A2. And then his A3, the damage here on this one is based off his HP, so this will hit quite a bit harder than his A1, but it attacks one enemy. The damage increases according to this champion's current HP. So if he's high on health, this is going to hit pretty hard. It's got a 3-turn cooldown. It's not going to be amazing, to be honest. It's going to do some okay damage, but really all of his damage is coming from this A2 ability. He also has this aura, ally HP in arena battles by 30%. So I think that early game, maybe mid game for like 3v3 especially, you know, you might get some use out of this. You might use him in arena some. I'll show him to you in arena battle as well. But ultimately, the way we're going to be building him for dungeons, faction wars, for Doom Tower, for Hydra, he's not really going to be that good in arena because your enemies just don't have that much max HP. So he's not going to hit that hard there, unfortunately. But again, early game, when your options are limited, he can absolutely go in there and do a job for you in, you know, like bronze tag arena, for example. He's actually going to be pretty damn good there because he is going to be so tanky. When we look at his gear, how I've built him out, it's all about that despair move. So very simply, what are we doing? Obviously, you know, I'm much later in the game. If you pick up this guy and you're progressing up to dungeons level 20, you're going to have worse stats. But the important things you want to aim for here, guys, you want to have 100% crit rate. That is super important. 100% crit rate is your #1 priority. He needs to crit with his A2. You want him to be at least 170 speed, but more speed is better. In fact, right now, I need some glyphs and stuff. I would say for Hydra, this is fine for like hard, maybe even brutal Hydra. I think going up to Nightmare Hydra, he's a bit too slow. I'd love to get him up to, you know, 220 plus would be a bit nicer, but it's okay. I think 200 is serviceable. And yeah, then we want to give him as much crit damage as possible. So it's really those 3 things are the main things. Now, on top of that, what else do we want to give him? He has fantastic. He's a HP-based champion. This is his big draw. This is the thing that he does better than Royal Guard. He has insanely good base HP, which is great. So it's going to be very easy to actually crank him up to pretty good HP numbers. So we want to crank his HP up to help him survive. About 2,000 defense is actually pretty good for surviving, and even a Nightmare Hydra with his HP and his defense, he's going to be very survivable. That's his big advantage over Royal Guard. And yeah, he doesn't need any attack, even though his A1 scales off attack. Not worth investing in at all. You can ignore attack effectively completely. And then the other interesting thing is certainly his accuracy. So 200 accuracy. is a good point to aim for if you're able to. You can also supplement this with accuracy auras for dungeons and stuff, right? It might be hard to get his accuracy high, but it can be worth getting his accuracy higher for those dungeons and Doom Tower things, right? So he can start stunning, he can start provoking. That stuff's actually very good for controlling waves. Of course, in Hydra, accuracy does absolutely nothing. So if you're building him purely for Hydra, you can essentially ignore accuracy completely. I actually have him with probably too much accuracy. Well, I do have him for too much accuracy for my Hydra build. It's just the gear that I have. I've got good gear, but not insane gear. So there you go. Again, the things that we're looking for, you're really looking for, you want a HP percentage chest, definitely. And we're definitely going to be looking for, crit rate, crit damage, maybe some speed. Those are the main things. Speed boots, if you need to get him that fast. You could put him in other boots if you wanted to, but I think speed boots are your go-to. And the ideal for the gloves is crit damage. Now, in order to put on crit damage gloves, you're going to need a lot of crit rate from other places. So like I have him in a lethal set right here, which is a 10% bonus crit rate, and it ignores 25% of enemies' defense. This is like Savage upgraded, which would be his best set. So yeah, that's obviously going to help me out. I've got lots of crit rate on the weapon. It's not actually fully rolled up. We might get some crit damage or speed there, which would help. Lots of crit rate on the helmet. Actually, not even that much crit rate there. But yeah, you can see that I've actually managed it somehow with low crit rate thanks to having the lethal set. But yeah, you're looking for stuff with substats of crit rate mostly, so you can get him in crit damage gloves very early on. If you don't have crit damage gloves, you can't get him with crit rate high enough. Crit rate gloves or HP percentage gloves will be fine. But yeah, definitely try to get him into crit damage gloves as soon as you can. It's the exact same thing for Royal Guard. It will pay off. Being able to farm those level 20 dungeons faster is certainly worth it. So definitely trying to max that out is one of the first steps in an account looking to really push into that mid game. For his accessories, fairly straightforward. HP ring with HP percent is really the thing to go for to just make him tankier. You could put him as well. A flat defense ring with HP percentage substats is really good. His base defense is terrible. So flat defense is actually really good. Believe it or not. Defense percent is actually not worth that much because the percentage increase is kind of low. So yeah, actually a flat defense ring with HP percentage substats is probably his best option to survive. And you don't really need any of those for damage too much. You definitely want him in a crit damage necklace. Then the substats don't hugely matter. Obviously, accuracy is helpful if you're building him for that. The rest is whatever you kind of need to buff up his stats wherever he's lacking. And then for his banner, the main thing you want to look for really is a banner with speed. I guess the best banner overall might be a flat defense or flat HP banner. Accuracy banner, if you need accuracy, that will help you hit the marker. I have him in a resistance banner. He actually has quite a bit of resistance in my build. Not really enough to do too much, like on the lower difficulties of Hydra. If we get decreased accuracy out, he's actually going to start resisting a lot of stuff. So that's nice. But that's really not essential. I wouldn't really bother building that, him for that in general. It's sort of a luxury thing. So that's not too important. But I actually just don't have many good banners, believe it or not. So this one isn't the worst. 2 rolls and speed is about all I've got. So I definitely could upgrade his banner. Now for his masteries, how do I have him run? This is like a Hydra specific sort of setup. So this is going in for Hydra. So you certainly want crit rate, crit damage. No question right there. You're probably going to want to get him single out. More damage to targets at less than 40% HP. That's very good. You're definitely going to want to get him bring it down. 6% more damage when attacking targets with higher max HP. And then it's where it sort of opens up. This is where you have options, but those are certainly the core. Now, if you want him to be purely that max HP nuker for level 20 dungeons, your best option might actually be to go into Flawless Execution. Just get more crit damage, right? When you're early game, you're really struggling to build crit damage, this is going to give you a consistent increase for farming those lower level dungeons. So that can be very valuable. I have him in War Master for Hydra. That's going to give you the biggest overall damage boost for Hydra. It's the best way to go. I grabbed a methodical on the way as well. I'm sorry, I'm slightly in the way of these, but you can see them. They are there. So yeah, you have options there. Another option, you could go across into Ruthless Ambush, 8% more damage for the first hit on each enemy. That's going to be actually pretty good. So you could go into Shield Breaker and take Ruthless Ambush. I think that's totally fine. The reason I didn't do that on my build is that I want him in Life Drinker specifically for Hydra. Life Drinker's not so important anywhere else, but for Hydra it's actually quite nice. So I will get him that. Like, he can full heal himself almost if he does a big despair hit on Hydra. That 5% healing is going to chunk his health up, which is very useful when you are in that stressful situation. People are low on health. But if you're not worried too much about that, you can go into Ruthless Ambush. Cycle of Violence is going to be decent for some wave clearing stuff. Chance to reduce his cooldowns. That's okay as well. I have him in Wrath of the Slain, which is kind of again, more so for a little bit of extra damage at the end of Hydra, but it's not that important at all. And then I have him through the defense tree. Bit more defense, less damage from AoE attacks. Resurgence, really nice. 50% chance to remove a debuff. Pretty good. Delay death. And then we have him getting some turn meter when an ally is crit, and a chance to counterattack when he loses some max HP. So this is the way I have him built. This is sort of my Hydra focused build, but you can switch him up. You can build him in other sorts of ways as well if you want to. It sort of depends on where you want to focus. And yeah, I mean, like, you could totally go down the support tree if you wanted more accuracy. That would be okay as well. That would be fine. So yeah, it's up to you. There you go. Let's see him in some action, shall we? Let's dive in. So the first place I want to look at him with is certainly for those early game dungeons. Let's see what he does for you in the early game. So I've actually set up a team already. So we're going in with this sort of team. This is a somewhat typical early game team. I've actually put Coldheart in just to give you a comparison point. How does a geared Coldheart compare to a geared Husk for the purposes of running Dragon? But this is a fairly typical team. We have Sylve the Drakes in there. You know, she's going to really help you with all those runs when you get her 6 months into the game. Brings you crowd control, revive, and some healing. Apothecary for an aura that's useful. And then giving us some speed and some healing, help us get through. Then we have a decreased defense champion in Zargala. I've got a guide on Zargala on the channel as well. You could use War Maiden, or if you're playing, you've got Simple. Simple would also work. Alexander the Sharpshooter, he would work really well as well. And then we got Husk in for that max HP damage. So basically, you know, against the dragon, you want to bring a poisoner or a max HP nuker. So we've got 2 max HP nukers right here. You could instead bring in a wave clear champion, because we'll see that Husk is going to help with the wave clear, but he's not going to be crazy fast. So you could bring in another wave clear champion and rely on Husk to kill the boss, especially in combination with Sylve the Drakes. It should work pretty well. Let's dive in anyway. Let's see how the run goes. Let's look at how hard he is hitting and whatnot. So we're going to get that speed boost from Apothecary. We reduce their defense, Syl stuns, and boom, there goes that despair attack from Husk. So the nice thing about that is it's giving us some backup stuns to supplement and to complement Syl, which is great. And you can see even as A1, it's doing okay damage, but not crazy much. But it's that A2 that is just going to be absolutely smacking. So there we go. We get through the first wave, speed boost again. We're going to be a little bit slower coming back around because we didn't quite get our moves back up. That's totally okay though. Here we go. We've got the decreased defense out. Boom. There's the despair. It's a nice big chunky hit. It's a nice chunky hit, as you can see. It's not one-shotting the waves, though, which obviously, if I put this sort of damaging gear onto a better, like a bigger nuker with more direct damage, like a Trunda or something, she would easily one-shot the waves. Husk is not going to do that. But here we go. We get to the boss, and this is where he really gets good. So we can see, like, his A1, it's doing about 11,000 damage with my gear. Okay, we got decreased defense on, and bam, in he comes with despair. 500,000 damage against that dragon. Absolutely chunks him, and he did about an extra 50,000 with War Master. So here we go. His A1, again, you can see it's doing about 10 to 11,000 per hit. So it's not doing anywhere near as much. It's all about that A2. We have a big hit coming in from Coldheart as well. Hers actually hit harder there because we had the weaken from Zargala. So that's going to throw our numbers off a little bit. That gave an extra, 25% damage to Coldheart. She's going to sneak up the meters here at the end. Poor Husk being robbed. Oh, and he didn't get another despair off. So that was maybe one of his worst runs in terms of Coldheart stealing his glory there a little bit. But as you can see, nonetheless, we come to the end of the run. For these dungeons up to stage 20, what is Husk doing? Good crowd control, which is great. He's also very tanky. You don't have to worry about him staying alive. And in terms of damage, his damage is way up there. So we compare him to Zargala, who is, you know, a damage dealer geared to smack fairly decently hard. Husk is outperforming her there. When it comes to Coldheart, who's also getting tons of damage from that max HP nuke on the dragon, we can see that Husk overall is going to be outperforming her. in these sort of dungeons. Why? Because she has the single target max HP nuke, but her AoE damage doesn't actually quite compare to Husk. So he's very good for this sort of content, for this sort of dungeon. So he's great there. So well worth running in this. Now, the one thing that you really have to worry about him with is affinity. Affinity is really important. So for Dragon, well, for any of these dungeons, of course, he's going to be great for red affinity, and he's going to be great for blue affinity as well. So especially when you're starting champion, you're probably still relying on your starting champion at this part of the game. They're blue affinity, so any of those red affinity stages are going to suck. Same thing for Royal Guard. Royal Guard is blue affinity. He can't do red affinity dungeons. So Husk can come in and he can do that for you, which is cool. So obviously stage 19 Dragon, he's going to be terrible at. Stage 20 though, Husk is really good for that. So that is awesome. For stages 21 and above, the bosses have max HP protection. They can only lose 10% of their health from a max HP hit at a time. So Husk really falls off. Now, he's not going to be terrible. He's still okay. His damage is actually going to scale up pretty good against the waves because their max HP goes way up. Therefore, his damage goes way up. So he's going to be okay. And he brings you some nice crowd control for those waves, right? So he's going to be decent for these runs. He's not going to do that much damage against the boss, though. So would I run him in any of these stages? Not really. Honestly, without like really good legendaries and stuff and seer teams or whatever, I'd just be farming stage 20s. But if you need to clear through this stuff in order to do your missions, you know, you need to beat it once or whatever, yeah, Husk can certainly help you on the stage, apart from stage 24. He'll help you on the other stages. He'll do decent damage. He'll help lock down the waves. He's going to be okay. Now, we come to Spider's Den. This is where it gets a bit tricky because, as we can see, we look at the affinities. Husk is a bad affinity for stage 20, so that definitely sucks. That definitely sucks. He's good for stage 19. You can see I just beat stage 19 once when I was first clearing through for Arbiter, like ages ago. So my clear time was 20 minutes. So we'll go through the meme team. I actually have this a video on this meme team on the channel. Hopefully I've got this set up right again, because obviously I haven't been using it. So we'll see if this works. Hopefully it should. This is a bit of a cheeky team, a bit of a meme team. But the way this team works, it's like an unkillable spider team. So we're going to have Maneater is going to put unkillable on us. And we're going to have this level 1 Renegade with no gear. There you go. You can see Husk come in, and Husk does a decent slam right there. Unfortunately, actually, I realized my Husk is faster than Tyrell. Tyrell must be missing some gear, so we actually lost some damage right there. You definitely want Husk going after Tyrell. Tyrell is in to place decreased defense. Actually, for this particular stage, I can now see, looking at it, boom, there you go. Look at that. Almost 1 million damage to that spider. For this stage, we want to bring in a decreased defense champion. That's a better affinity. Heartseeker from Cold Heart doing about the same damage there as Husk. Bam, Husk is slamming in this hit right here. There we go. One nice thing for these lower these spider stages as well, you can see we will kill the spiderlings with Husk because he hits so hard. So that mastery that gives you more damage for every enemy killed is actually going to help him to do more damage. And you can see for this particular run, Renegade racking up the XP, which is hilarious. But yeah, this is a cheeky team. Again, I've got a full guide on the channel how to run this team. It is quite specific. Decreased defense champion. You need Maneater or someone like that. Roshguard the tower would also work. Basically 2 turns unkillable. So a Renegade can just sit there unkillable with no gear on, and the spiderlings all hit her. We decrease defense. Max HP nukes from Cold Heart and Husk. Renegade helps them reset and get back to those really fast. Cheeky team. We'll sell this as well. And yeah, you can see Husk does the job here. Would this work on stage 20? It might. We'll run it for fun. It might work, but the issue is our affinity right here. So we could definitely have Husk weak hitting. I'll just leave it on auto. Yeah, I should have put in someone that would be faster than Husk. So he actually did crit the boss right there, but you see the decreased defense wasn't on, so we lose a lot of damage compared to what the Cold Heart is doing. Also, that mastery, that Ruthless Ambush I mentioned, that makes you do 8% more damage on your first hit. For Spider, is actually very important because we only hit the Spider, you know, once or twice. But this team looks like it's maybe going to do okay. There's the Sacrificial Ritual. Now, we really want Husk to crit. If we don't, it gets worse. And there we go. He weak hits. You can see he does 100,000. Like, the damage is just not quite there compared to, oh, and a Heartseeker got resisted. So this might go wrong. We might have that Siphon from Maneater. We do. So we're going to get through, probably. But it's definitely going to be a slower run. So it can work. But there's some spiciness to this. Like, there's no question that, you know, would Royal Guard be better for stage 20? Absolutely, because he wouldn't weak hit. Another Cold Heart would be way better. She's by far the best max HP nuker for this, or like Septimus if you got Septimus. This spider looks like he's probably going to get a reset on his turn meter, which is very, very sad. Yeah, he's going to get a reset. It's going to slow us. Oh, no, never mind. Oh, Maneater got resisted. So I think this team would still win, but we're not going to sit through it for the video because it's sketchy. So you can see it would help you. Husk would certainly help you beat stage 20 in a team sort of like this. You might have even a more straightforward team, but it's not going to be consistent for farming it. So again, for Arbiter missions, you could just do a run and get lucky and not get any weak hits. You beat stage 20. Great. Cool. All right, good. You've got that done for your Arbiter missions. Fantastic. But it's not something you want to farm. As you can see, it's just not consistent. He needs to get lucky and not weak hit. We also got very unlucky with resists there. But then again, we also had a very solidly built team, so a bit cheeky. Now, the other place we would run him, where he's going to be very effective, is going to be in Faction Wars. He's going to be great for Faction Wars as well, guys. So let's actually turn on Super Raid. Let's knock out a Super Raid. So obviously, again, this team is you know, it's in decent gear, but it should be a pretty good comparison. So what do we expect Husk to do in Faction Wars? In Faction Wars, he's going to do two things for us which are really good. Number one, he's going to help us clear through the waves with his stuns and his provokes. This is where his A1 being booked would actually help quite a bit. He's going to be nice and tanky, so not too hard to keep alive. He's going to do solid damage. And he's really going to chunk the bosses with that A2 once again. So he's really going to help you kill that boss. And the boss for Undead Hordes is, in my opinion, pretty tough. The legendaries for Undead Hordes are extremely good, but you need to pull them, which is the tricky thing. Whereas Husk is a bit more guaranteed. So here we go. Actually, this is going to be a bit of a slower run. We got a little bit unlucky, but we should be totally fine. And again, this is going to be an interesting run in that it will give us a cool comparison, hopefully, between him and a more typical attack-based nuker in Vlad over here, and then some other sort of support-based champions. But here, this is what Husk does really well. He comes in and he lands that stun, which is going to help us just hit these champions and not be counterattacked. That little bit of extra CC. As you can see, these counterattacks actually do quite hurt. They do quite suck. Again, you can see how tanky that Husk is as well. He's able to take the hit and basically keep going, which is pretty awesome. We obviously have a Gore Grab in here to revive, so that's going to keep us safe. The one big downside, again, for Husk is unfortunately Affinity, which is always going to be a concern. It's the concern with any non-void champion, but Affinity is certainly an issue. So for example, when we get to this wave right here, what do we have? We've got our 3 Valkyries, which are going to be putting that shield and counterattack. We have the Provoke comes in from Vogoth, though. Vogoth, amazing, helping us lock them down. Fantastic. Hopefully he'll increase their cooldown as well with his passive. Gotta love Vogoth. Guide on Vogoth on the channel too. But here comes Husk, and you can see he actually landed stuns on 4 of them, which is great. That's really, really good. And we absolutely blow up the Errol before he's really able to do anything. And then Husk is going to also be getting pretty good damage onto Warcaster, who can do who can be placing that block damage, right? So Husk is going to be great here. He's going to help you lock down Warcaster or Errol. The stuns on Valkyries are going to be inconsistent because of Affinity, but he can certainly help you to get through. So you can see again with this team, what we're basically doing, bam, good hit from Husk. We do get one of those off, unfortunately. That kind of sucks. We were just short of getting the Provoke out from Vogoth before. So now we're going to have to sort of wade through. Maybe Husk will come back around and get a stun on them and save us some time watching these animations. Come on, Husk. No stun right there. The weak hits. That is unfortunate. So, yeah. But you sort of get the idea, right? This is what he is going to do. Let me pause it while we go through the rest of this wave, and we'll show you what he can do against the boss. Okay, so that was a great fun wave watching counterattack animations, but here we are, we're at the boss, and let's see what Husk is doing. So you can see his A1, again, is doing about 20,000 damage, something like that with the A1, nothing too crazy. Obviously gets boosted a bit by the increased attack, but yeah, we don't really mind. And now this boss is going to start smacking us. We actually got a debuff removed from Seeker. That's quite nice, actually. That might get Seeker back around. And there we go, Despair from Husk, massive chunk off the boss, 100,000 damage. Yeah, he's just really going to help us start tearing through. And yeah, that's basically what he does. You know, you get to that boss, he's going to chunk it. And again, that was a hit without weaken or decreased defense. It's obviously difficult to get those things consistently on this boss. Vlad can land it, but Vlad's not booked. But yeah, it's, you know, this boss, he's a pain in the butt. He really chunks your champions with that move. So this doesn't look like it's going to be a 3-star run. But it's not bad. Again, you can see the funny thing about this boss, his move ignores defense. Goodbye, Husk. it does like 40,000 damage to Husk. It ignores defense, but it also scales off max HP. So it's very difficult to keep people alive. But we get through the end, and as you can see, how is Husk doing on this particular run? His damage is actually very solid, right? He's doing a solid chunk of damage, and also bringing us some CC. And this is against weak affinity stuff. So he's a decent addition to your Undead Horde Crypt. Not bad at all. You can see Vlad is obviously better. Void affinity. Vlad's not booked or anything. Vlad is amazing for this Crypt. If Vlad was booked, Vlad would destroy him if Vlad was booked. There's no question. He would completely destroy him. But Husk is still useful. He is still useful. But let's go to the main highlight here, where Husk is at his best, which is up against that Hydra. So let's go into Hydra Hard. And I did a guide on this team. This is the team I ran. Yeah, this exact team is what I ran week 1, trying it out against Hard. So we simply take out Royal Guard, and we can put in our Husk, and we can see what he's going to do. And the really nice thing here about Husk is that Husk, again, his damage against Hydra scales off max HP. So what is he going to do for us? He's going to hit just harder and harder as we go up each Hydra difficulty. His damage scales more. So he's going to be okay, but not great on Hydra normal. Quite good on Hydra Hard, and then God tier damage against Hydra Nightmare, right? That's basically what he's going to be doing. So we'll go in with this sort of team. We'll see it now. Actually, this team is sort of specifically designed that we need to land a decreased speed in the right way. But let's just give you an insight into his damage, shall we? So here we go. Waiting for it. Mother Cybele. Okay, Husk. Is he coming around? We're coming around to Husk. Here he goes. Boom, Despair. About 800,000 damage on that Despair hit here on this Hydra rotation. Now, the big thing about this as well, as you can see, is that it comes down to affinity a lot as well. So our starting affinities here are actually very good for Husk, not so good for Royal Guard, right? Royal Guard can weak hit these two guys in the middle because they're force, whereas Husk will strong hit all 3 of these, get normal hits and strong hits on those. Well, all of them will be crits. And then he can weak hit Mischief, but that's okay. We can use like Geomancer to target Mischief. So he's going to hit hard. Now, if we go across, let's see how he will do against Nightmare, for example. So he did 800,000 right there. We'll come in, same team. We'll run it on Nightmare. Hopefully the speeds are set up correctly. Let's see. So we have the block stuff coming in. Great. She's going to slam this in. Okay, we're coming around to Husk. Here he goes. Boom. Look at that. That time, what did that do? About 1.5 million. So Husk's damage just went way up, right? He's hitting way, way harder. And that is what makes him so strong, right? That's what makes these AoE enemy max HP champions so strong. And guess what? There's only 2 of them in the game right now, Husk and Royal Guard. And they're both very, very good. Like if we look on Nightmare at the teams of the week, what do we have? Number 1 team, Husk and a Royal Guard. The reason that you might bring in 2 of them is just to balance stuff out, right? If you've got 2 Force Nukers or 2 Magic Nukers, it can potentially get a bit imbalanced and you might hit the wrong stuff. This guy, he's running 2 Royal Guards. We have a Royal Guard and Husk, Royal Guard and Husk. This guy's got double Husk and a Tumisia. He's got Tumisia as well, right? We've got a Husk coming in here as well. Double Husk. You get the idea, and you can see why he is so good. So yeah, there you go. That should give you an insight into, I'm not going to do the full run right here. I'm going to be doing more Hydra videos, of course, and you're going to see him there because obviously he's going to be going into my runs. I switched up his gear. He was in bad gear last week because he was a bad affinity for the last Hydra rotation, but he's great affinity for this one. So he's well geared now. I guess the final note is, I guess as an overall review of Husk versus Royal Guard, who is better? Which one is better? I will say, to be fair, I think Royal Guard is slightly better overall because of his utility. The advantage that Husk brings is crowd control for waves, which is very nice, and then just insane base HP. That's the big thing, but his base crit damage is a bit lower. His A1 and his A3, in terms of damage, aren't amazing, and he doesn't have a good aura, so that does set him back a bit. If we look at Royal Guard in comparison, what makes Royal Guard slightly better? But obviously the biggest thing comes down to affinity. Do they have positive affinities? Royal Guard has 10% more crit damage, which helps. Royal Guard has a good aura, so this is great for farming Minotaur. And then he can put decreased defense on his A1. He has a 4-hitter at random that can put decreased speed. So when we go into Hydra, Royal Guard is overall slightly better. especially if he can get his accuracy high enough with like increased accuracy, because he can start landing decreased speed, decreased defense, which is nice. Decreased defense, especially for Minotaur, is very useful to bring with the aura, so that sets him a bit ahead there. And then obviously the 4-hitter at random can proc War Master against multiple targets, which is also kind of nice. But the big disadvantage of Royal Guard, we talked about his crit damage being better. Look at his health, look at his defense. He is way squishier than Husk, way more difficult to keep alive, and that can be a big difference, right? I said Husk's base defense was pretty bad, and it was. Well, it's okay, about 900 and something. Royal Guard's base defense is terrible, and then his base HP is 15,000 compared to Husk's 20,000 and something. So Husk is just way tankier, way easier to keep alive. So it's kind of that balancing match. It's that balancing match. And as you can see, when it comes to Hydra, it often depends on what the starting heads are, is going to make the big difference. Royal Guard, more utility, blue affinity. Husk, tankier, red affinity. But both very good. So there you go, guys. That is my review of Husk, my guide to Husk. Awesome champion. Well worth building out. Great to see him come out of the spotlight again with Hydra. I think he really got overlooked in favor of Royal Guard because Royal Guard was better for Spider Dungeon. But Husk, he's fantastic. He's really cool. I think part of it as well is that, you know, he's like this weird looking, he kind of looks like one of the, I don't know, like Sauron from Lord of the Rings, but, you know, Sauron, he's let himself go a bit, you know. He lost to the hobbits, you know, he's having a rough time. He's not really himself anymore, you know what I mean? Watching a lot of daytime TV. It's, you know, it's tough after losing. But there you go. That's Husk. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.